Hi everyone, welcome to the Doc Roberts demo here. We're going to do a hummingbird, so it's the Doc Roberts hummingbird video demo. Here I'm just lighting the torch up, getting started here. So today we're going to make a cute little hummingbird. And keep in mind this is just a demo, doesn't replace any instructional that you would get from an in-person class or anything like that. So here I got some I think it's a blue, green, amber, purple is what I got here. So I'll have a nice little color on the outside. We're going to go ahead and mix this up and make some lines on the, I think it's a 8mm clear rod. So I'm going to stripe that on there. So I'm going to heat this up on the end here and I'm going to go ahead and pull a little bit off. Clean up that scuzz on the end. That's what I'm doing. I got a clear rod. Like again, I said, I think it was 8mm what I'm using here. That's what it looks like. I'll probably clean up the end of this rod too a little bit. I'll make sure you get a good length rod because we're going to stripe about 2.5 to 3 inches of this color onto this clear rod so we can, save our color. We're going to just encase this clear rod. Again, this is in boro. And so I'm going to heat this rod up enough to kind of make sure that it's all melted back enough that I can stripe this on. And there is a technique to this that you need to learn to stripe on with. You definitely don't want a thick line. I just do a thin line all the way straight down, about 2.5 to 3 inches. That's all you need. And there is a little technique to do this. That's something that you want to learn. I am going to do this in an instructional, and that's something that you can pick up in the instructional. So I'm just going to coat this clear rod with this blue, amber, purple. I'll kind of make sure it stays melted in, of course. I like this color a lot. It gives a lot of different shades of greens and blues. And you can put some clouds in it too. So you can do quite a bit of different stuff here with this color glass. One of my favorite colors to work with here. So again, I'm just striping this all the way around. Again, this is a little technique. Definitely don't want to encase any bubbles and stuff like that. So I teach that in an instructional. But for the demo, we're just going to kind of talk about, got to get this glass striped up so we can move forward here. We're just going to coat it all the way around. We'll get it all melted in too. Well, it looks like I got one more little stripe to do, and then we can punch you up to the other end. Now this could be done also in soft glass. You would definitely work it a different way in soft glass. I probably wouldn't do the body first. I'd probably start with the nose or the beak, and then that way you have something to work from. So I'd build up the beak, build up the head, and then build up the body. This way we're kind of doing it opposite or backwards because you have to have a strong punny to hold on to while you're finishing everything up in soft glass. Whereas in hard glass, we're going to punny up to the bottom of this thing and we can work it from there. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves right at this point. We're just trying to stripe this glass on, make sure we get a nice even coat all the way around it. And here I'm just punning up with the same color rod, because I'm going to cover the end of that in clear. So I want to make sure that gets covered. And here I'm just kind of melting it in. And then you notice I'm not twisting it up just yet. I'm just trying to get it all nice and even heat, and then make sure I got all the knots out of the end here, and then we'll put some even heat into it, and then we can, after we get it all melted in, all those stripes go away, then we can kind of, you know, do whatever twisting or whatever else you want to do to it at that point. So yeah, here I'm just kind of getting it super hot and making sure I get it all melted in. This is a pretty forgiving glass, so you know, you can pretty much put some heat onto it, not scuzz it up. Again, I only striped about 2.5, 3 inches at most. These aren't real big hummingbirds, probably about 3, 4 inches long from beak to tail. So I'm cooking that all the way in. The goal here is to get rid of those lines so they don't appear in the glass. That way you have some striations, but you don't have super thick lines to cover up. And you could put some black in there and twist it up and make some different designs. And like I said, this is just a green blue. You can use all different kinds of colors, so don't feel like you have to use the same colors I do or anything like that. You can be your own person and make your own colors and stuff like that. So here I'm just cooking it in and making sure it all melts together. Main thing here is you can cook it back, and that way you don't have those lines no more. That's the main goal here at the very beginning here. And then we're going to go ahead and we'll twist it up just a little bit, put some lines through it and stuff like that. You don't want them to be straight. Sometimes I like to go back and forth one way or the other. Again, just cooking that glass in. And this will give you enough to make the body with. Notice there I'm giving it a little twist. You don't want tight lines. I don't think they look good with real super tight lines. I like them to be striations, of course, of the twist. Just my preference. So here I'm going to pull that punty off. I got plenty of glass to cover up that clear. And this is where I'll cook it in real good. And here I'm just kind of cooking it back. I'm kind of building a little bit of a gather at this point, but I'm just trying to cook it back a little bit. So as we're melting this in, I'm kind of, building a little bit of a gather. I'm just melting the back, kind of going nice and slow. You don't want to go too fast in this process. It'll flop to one side or the other. You'll lose some of the striations, where they flow nice and evenly. So as I'm cooking this in, I'm just going right underneath the ball. That way it gathers up and collects more glass. And this will be the shape for the body. So that's kind of what we're looking for, is the shaping. And again, in the instructional that I make for this, we'll go over some of that shaping and how to get to it and how to get that shaping that you want. And it's very important that you get the proportions down correctly. I mean, that's the most important part here, is that that way whenever you put the head on, it's proportioned correctly, and then so is the wings. So I'm just trying to cook it back and cook it back. I'm trying to build a gather up, making sure that gather is nice and thick. It's probably a little bit about the size of a nickel. And once I get it to where it kind of looks like a light bulb shape, that's what I'm wanting. And then I can go ahead and elongate it a little bit. So now I'm going to take some of that gather out of it, and then we're going to kind of make it the shape of the bird's body. I'm just kind of letting gravity help me do most of this stuff. So now I kind of got the shaping that I want a little bit. This is where I'll build the gather for the head. Now I'm actually using a whole rod to build the head. You can go ahead and stripe some glass onto some clear and still do it. I find it's just a little bit faster to do it this way, and it's not that much of glass. I'd probably use that much striping it on anyway. And this way I'm not wasting a whole bunch trying to figure out how much I'm going to need on a clear rod to make the head. And sometimes you don't want to do that, just because some of that clear may stick out and you may have an ugly head. I like to just do it all on one rod. Just my opinion though. And here we're just building the gather up, nice and easy for the head. And proportion wise, I mean, that's what you're going to have to learn here. Again, that's what I teach in the instructional video. So we'll just build up a little gather here, and this is going to be the head part. Now putting it on to the body, that's pretty key. You want to make sure it's nice and straight. You want to put it in the spot that you want it at. I'm looking it over right now, and I'm thinking, okay, where do I want this head at, and where do I want to position it at? I try to make the striations match up on, in a line, and then I'm going to go ahead and touch down. And this is kind of important. It's more at a little bit of an angle here. If you mess this part up, because I'm actually pushing down and pulling out a little bit, so it has a nice flow from the body to the neck to the head. So that's something that you're going to have to learn to do, something I'll teach in the instructional, of course. But then you pull that off, and then you're going to round this out. Nice round head is what you want here. So I'm just trying to cook it back, make it nice and round, make sure there's no undercuts. That's the reason why I kind of push down into the body and then pull it up slightly that way. It's a nice flow from the body to the neck. It doesn't look like it's, got an undercut there. Just going nice and slow, cooking it back. I mean, this is the part where you can do some striking too for the head, so you can have different colors, show up some more greens or some more blues, whichever you want. Some more clouds too, if you want some more clouds. All right, now that I got it all cooked in, I'm gonna go ahead and I used jet black for the beak, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of gather on, and I'm going to touch down on that beak and pull it out. So we'll clean up this rod first. Get all the scuzz off the end of it. I think it was a new rod, so But here I'm just going to build up the gather. I'm looking at where I'm going to place the beak at. I'll make sure I got some heat into it. That way you got some, even heat when you attach the two pieces. That way when you pull the rod out for the beak, you got one nice straight line beak. And in soft glass, this will probably be your first process, is making the beak onto the head. Then you'd build the body, and that's the way I would do it. But right here, I'm going to go ahead. I'm heating up the head. I'm heating up the gather glass. Proportion-wise, you'll need to figure that part out because you'll need to know how much glass you're going to pull. This is roughly about a 2mm beak. So I kind of try to touch down right in the center of the ball of the head. That is very key. Otherwise, if you pull off center and you don't get enough even heat here, you won't be able to pull the beak straight out. So what I'm doing here is I touch down, I push in slightly, and then now I'll pull slightly. That way I get a nice even flow. And then I'll go ahead, heat up the rest of the rod where I'm going to pull out at, and then I try to pull the nice little straight point. Now at the very end here, I'll go ahead and thicken it up just slightly and pull down. That way it gives a nice little design to the beak front. Most of the hummingbirds I've seen have a little tilt to their beak in the front, so I like to capture that little detail. That sets the hummingbird's beak off quite a bit. And this is pretty much key in some of the features I make of mine. Now you guys can do whatever you guys want. You can pull a nice straight beak, and you don't have to put no curve in it. Just whatever you guys want to do. You can see that I'm gonna go ahead and pull off just whatever I don't need. So I'm heating it up slightly, and then I'm going to pull it to a nice little point. Now there's a little trick to that, something I'll give some information into the instructional video. But for the most part, you want to make sure this is nice and straight. If it comes off center, heat the whole thing back up and pull it straight again. I didn't like how crooked it was, or there was a little flaw in it, so I've heated the whole beak up, and I'm just going to straighten it out again. Make sure it's nice and straight. And that's a little bit of information on how to straighten out a beak there, just in case you get them crooked. Sometimes I don't even get them crooked and I have to fix them, just like this one. So that's a little bit of things that you can do to fix the piece that you have instead of starting over. Kind of give you a little idea. Now I'm pumping some heat into it. I got the beak nice where I want it at. I'm just kind of looking over everything, pumping some heat into the body. All right, now I got some heat into the body. I'm reaching behind myself to grab a punty for later. Get some heat in there. Make sure you got some heat so you can continue working. And then this is where I'll heat up the head to place the eyes in. Now you'll see me use this little tool here. You can buy these tools, of course. You can place the eyeballs, pretty centered, by yourself. I like to use this tool here because I like to make sure that it's nice and straight. So what I'll do with this little tool is I'll put a little indentation where I'm going to put the eyeballs at on each side. So I straighten the tool up, look at the bird, and I'll reach in there. I'll use this tool. I'll make the little tool marks on each side of the head. That way they look symmetrical and they're right in the center. Otherwise, you could just go ahead and eyeball it and put them on. I've done that plenty of times. I just wanted to show everybody that you can use a tool to put these eyes on straight. This is a tool I made myself and just kind of bent around and sharpened them. But here, now that I got the hole there, a little bit indentation, I can take the black, heat up a little piece of it, and touch down and put the eyeball on. Right here I'm cooking the eyeball back in. I'm just going to pull a little bit out, it looks like, just to make sure that I don't have too big of an eyeball. You can cook those back in and mar them a little bit, that way they don't spread any wider than what they are, and you can push them into the glass, of course. I kind of like to use as less tools as possible to touch my glass. So here I'm just heating it up and then cooling it off with the tool. That little knife there is just trying to make sure that the eyeball stays round and stays in center. And then I'll do the other side. And since I already got the little indentation there from the tool, I'm just kind of covering that up, making sure I fill that cavity up very good. You don't want any undercuts or any bubbles or trap any air. Otherwise that'll fracture off. And here I'm just cooking the eyeball in. You could get a little bit more elaborate here, and you could, use some eye cane and, put some better looking eyes in there if that's what you want to do. And give a little bit more detail. So here I'm just pumping some heat into the head, just making sure I got it all melted in. And it's all nice and even heat all the way through. I'm heating the body back up, making sure I got some heat for that. Definitely don't want this thing to fracture. So here I'm just heating up the punny. And I'm going to attach this punny to the bottom of that bird. It's very key when you attach this punny. It's going to be a cold seal, it's not a hot seal. If you make a hot seal on accident, you're going to have some cleaning up to do. So I like to heat the bird up to about a stage 2 heat, and then I like to heat that punty up to about a stage 2 heat. And then what I'm going to do is let it cool down slightly and then attach them. It's very key that I attach it in the center of that body so that when I pull the tail off punty, that this is nice and straight and even, and that I come back to place the wings on, I don't have to worry about anything being crooked. If you don't place this punny on straight, you're going to have some struggles. So there I attached it on. I'm making sure that there is an undercut, just to make sure that when I pop this off later, it becomes a nice little clean cut from the punty, or from the bird. And that punty comes off nice and easy. Definitely don't want any glass left over here. You want to make sure that that punny comes off very cleanly. Make sure it's nice and even. Then I'm going to go ahead and burn this other punny off from the tail. Make sure that you leave enough of the colored glass over top of the clear. If you don't, you'll have some clear show up in your tail. So definitely pull some of that off. That's what I'm doing now, is I'm kind of cooking it in a little bit. Pulling some of that off. And this is where I'll go ahead and make some shaping. Now I'm trying to taper that tail in just a little bit. So I'm heating the gather up and I'm kind of letting it elongate or stretch out a little bit. So I want that tail to be kind of like a little gather. That way when I smash it, it smashes out wide. And then that way I can have a nice little tail stalk on it. And so now I'm just kind of making the glass droop just slightly. That way the body lines go nice and straight and there's no weirdness to it. And I'm letting gravity kind of help me do this stuff. So once I got it nice little long body shape on it, and that way I can go ahead and gather the end of it where the tail's going to be at, and that's where I'll smash it. So just pumping some heat into it, making sure that you get that nice little, you don't want it to be awkward. You want it to be a nice little flow between the body and the tail. So here you can see I'm heating that tail up quite a bit. Just making a nice little gather out of it. And I'll reach up here with my mashers and I'll give it a little mash. You don't want to give it too much of a mash just a little thin. You don't want to go super thin where it fractures off later. You want it pretty thick. You want it to match the uh, the striations. You also want it to match the thickness of the body to the tail. So you got to have some proportion control there. So here, that's what I'm trying to do, is just making sure everything's nice and warm and got a lot of heat there. And then I've got to go up there and I'm going to give the striations for the tail. I take my little pliers there, needle nose pliers, and I make the lines across for the tail. And I try to start in the center, and then I'll do one or two on the right side, one or two on the left side. And those little striations gives you the appearance that they're tail feathers and so forth. Now if I think I need another line or two in there, I'll reach up there and I'll put another couple marks in there. If not, and this one looks pretty good, I'll go ahead and heat the tail up to where I want to pull it, because it's kind of like awkward now. That tail might be a little uneven, and if it is, this is the chance for you to fix it. So I'll get my little tweezers, heat that tail up a little bit, and I'll pull it out. There we go. Now I'm going to heat it up. I'm going to pull it to a point a little bit. So any weirdness that you have in it or unevenness, this is the spot that you fix that at. I'm just heating up the edges, pulling it to a nice little point, making sure that it flows correctly. I'm just heating it up here, making sure I get all the weirdness out of it, making sure it looks right. So I'm making some final adjustments, pulling tail or making sure that the tail is bent a little bit. I find that bending that tail makes it look like it's flying and so forth, so it has a little bit of flow to it, especially when it's hanging. So here I'm heating up the rod, and this is where I'm going to attach the first wing. So I'm building up a small little gather. I'm going to heat up the spot on the body where I want to attach the wing at. This is kind of crucial. When you attach this piece, you want to kind of make sure you get enough of a gather there. You don't want the wings to be small. You can always make them larger and pull them down. So you want to make sure you get the right amount of gather to attach to. Here I'm heating the spot up, and I'm going to touch down onto the bird. When I think I got enough on there, I'll definitely burn some off, and then this is the key where you're going to try to make it nice and kind of like a little gather on the end. You don't want to melt it all the way into the bird just yet. What you want to do is kind of gently brush that heat up against the body, but you mainly want to build like a small gather on a stick there for the wing, because you're going to smash this out too. So I'm trying to just make it nice and round. I find that if I make them nice and round and I go up there and smash the wings in, they tend to turn out a little bit better. You don't want to get too much heat in there where it's floppy droppy, just enough that you can reach up there, give it a little mash with your needle nose pliers. I'm going to do the front side of the wing first, and I work my way to the back, because that's the attachment I'm going to make to pull these wings out with. So I'll go ahead and attach to the front with my pliers, and I'm just going to kind of give it a little tug. I'm just going to go slow while I'm brushing it in the flame and pull these wings out. Once you get used to doing this, you'll pretty much make them pretty even every single time. It does take a while to make one wing match the other one, and that's going to take a little practice. I try to make a nice little termination point on them. I do like to make them curved a little bit. That way they look like they're in motion a little bit. And I always do the left wing first, or if you face it, it's the right wing. But the left side of the bird is the one I do first, because I am right-handed. If you're left-handed, I would probably do the right side first. That's just my preference on where the torch is going to be brushing up on the back side of the bird. It's a preference for me on how I build these. Just little tidbit of information. So I'm going to go ahead and heat up another gather, and I'm going to go ahead and heat that bird up, make the attachment, and pull that wing out, and try to make them the same exact size. The amount of glass you put on there for the bird wing, you try to match on the other side. So try to remember what size gather you did. You can always take away some glass. It's harder to add the glass because sometimes you have to start over. Melt that whole wing back in, start over. So here once again, I don't want it to be melted into the bird yet. I'm just trying to make sure that I get enough heat onto that wing that it makes a nice little round ball, and then that way when I smash it, it smashes out into a nice little section that I can pull on for the wing. And this is where I'm just trying to match them up. Making sure I get enough heat in there. You don't want too much. You don't want floppy droppy. You just want it to be malleable, that you can make those smashes with those needle nose pliers in the right spot. I'm going to reach up there and I'm going to slightly pull a little bit at a time just to pull that wing out, trying to make sure I match the other wing at the same time. This will take a little bit of practice to do. Once I think I got them right, I'll go ahead and heat them up and finish them out. It looks like I got this wing just a little bit longer than I do the other one, so I'll kind of fix it just at the tip there. Just heat some up and then pull it out, make sure it matches. And that's probably the hardest part, is making these wings match each side. Sometimes I pull them nice and straight every single time, and then there's other times I have to fix them. So it's just a matter of going back and making sure they're the same size. And if that don't work, you're gonna have to start over. You just, do one wing and do the other one again. And the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. So here I'm kind of looking at it, making sure the wings match up, and it looks like everything does. Nice little points. So this part is very crucial. I'm heating up the back of the head. I'm heating up the body too. You want to make sure you don't brush any of this heat onto your wings. You will melt them and they'll fall down, especially if you've already got the curve in there. Now I'll use a 3 to 4 millimeter rod for the hook on the neck. I try to place it right in the back of the head. I don't want it to be on the head. I want it to be right on the body in the back of the head. There's very little error to make here, so you got to make sure you put them in the right spot. So I'm going to heat up the back of the neck, and this is usually a cold seal at this point because I got a little mini torch. I'm going to go ahead and make sure it flows nice and even. But I go ahead and use this 3-4 millimeter rod. I'll make that attachment right in the center, right behind the head, in the neck area, pretty close. I mean, it's almost literally touching the back of the head. I'll take about 1.5 inches or so, burn it off, and then this is where I'll go ahead and kind of make sure I heat up just the hook. I'm going to pull off what I need first, and then when I get about 1.5 inches or as much as I think I'm going to need, then I'll just tweezer it off, and then I'm heating up the whole stick that I placed there, all of it. That way when I go ahead and bend it, I can bend it and shape it wherever I want. At first I'll go ahead and make the little shape, make it look like a little C shape. That way I know the top of it, and then I'm going to round it out to the bottom. Now it does matter quite a bit where you place the bottom hook. You place it too far back on the tail piece, and it's going to hang wrong. If you put too close, it's going to hang wrong. There is a nice little medium section that you're going to have to figure out where you place the body so that it hangs properly and weight properly. So that hook is super important to get correct. Otherwise your beak will hang downward or it'll hang upward. And most people, what I find, they like their birds to be in flight where the beak is nice and level. It looks like it's flying. So in order to do that, you're going to have to figure out how this is weighted and where you want that hook at. Here you can see I'm using my little mini torch, and I'm melting in just the base of that. As I'm melting in just the base of that hook, I'm actually making sure it flows into each other. There's no undercuts. I don't want any undercuts because those are really bad places for your bird to fracture at. So I'm just trying to make sure that I get enough even heat in there, and I'm trying to take it in as thirds, so I'll heat a little bit up in the back and then heat a little bit up in the front, making sure it all flows. If it flows and there's no undercuts, then it's all one piece of glass. But it is very key to get these hooks proper. If you don't get the hook proper in there, they'll either hang upside where the tail's hanging too far down and the beak's hanging too far up, and so forth. But you definitely want to make sure that you get that proportion correct so it sits weightedly. And here I'm kind of straightening up the hook a little bit. And then I'm going to give it a little test because I'm going to put those little pliers inside that hole, and I'm going to make sure it kind of rests properly. So here I'll heat that up one last time, reach my tool in there, heat my tool up. Don't never touch a cold tool to hot glass, you will fracture it. So I'm going to take this punny off on the bottom. And after you take this punny off, you're going to go ahead and clean up any punny marks or any tool marks that you have. Well, and that's pretty much it. You got one cute little hummingbird. I'm making sure that it hangs properly, and I got all that taken care of. It goes in the kiln, 1050 degrees for about an hour or so, and then I usually go ahead and let it do its little cycle. All right, thanks for watching.